Hello everyone, welcome back. We are continuing with our Carolina Springs Charter Hawks MC series, and today's story is Down and Out. So, trigger warnings for this story are going to be a bit different from previous stories, but they include mother dying in or just after childbirth. Same person had died of cancer. I think that's it, but I could be wrong, because this one, it is one of my favorites, but it is one of the ones that's harder for me to get through because of the fact that a woman had died in childbirth. So it is kind of difficult for me, but I do go back and reread it. So that being said, let's move on with the actual review and synopsis. So a little backstory on our male lead, who is Kaylin Brooks, also known as Dive. We really got to know him a little bit more in hiding out. He took a lot of pleasure in pretending to hit on Willow just to annoy Dodge. And there had been references that Willow had made that she thought that Dive was sneaking somebody in and out of his house. Well, we find out that he had actually been seeing Josie's friend, Simone. And they'd had kind of a hidden relationship, so to speak. They'd had a little bit of a snag and had a break, and right about the time he was coming back to try and win her back, he found out that A, she had cancer that she was dying from, and B, she was also carrying his child. And the same day she gave birth to their son, she passed away. So here's Dive. He's realized what his feelings for Simone are. He goes to get her back. She's dying, and by the way, you have a son now. And he's there when she dies. He's there when she gives birth and dies. So that's a huge trauma for anyone, really. And he completely shuts down. I mean, it's a lot to take in, so it's very understandable. But he shuts down. He moves away from Carolina Springs to the same town where his mother lives, buys a house, and basically devotes his whole life to his son. Again, understandable. His mother has convinced him that, you need to find other fulfillment in your life outside of your child. It doesn't have to be another relationship, but it needs to be like work, a hobby, something besides just hovering over your son all the time, because he's very much a helicopter father, to the point where his son is at the point where he's supposed to be starting on baby food and he won't give it to him. He's scared he's gonna choke or something. Simone's death basically traumatized him and makes him terrified that he's gonna lose his son. But he's starting to see the wisdom of his mother's words about how he needs to kind of pull back a little bit, which seems kind of weird when you're a parent. You're like, I shouldn't pull back, they're my kid. But it is valid, because you can smother your child's development. But this is how he meets Philomena McAdams, also known as Mena. She is a widow who is currently living out of her car because her husband left her in so much debt that she couldn't afford an apartment. So she comes to interview for the position of nanny. She was the only woman who came to interview for this position that actually interacted with the little boy. And that was the winning factor for Dive's mother, who talked Dive into hiring her. The relationship develops, but it has to develop into a friendship before it can develop into a romance. He is very, very protective of his son. Again, understandably so. To the point where when Mena had tried to do some things with him that Dodge hadn't specifically said she could do, he got very upset to the point where she thought she'd lost her job. And his mother basically had to intervene. Dodge and Philomena she doesn't really feel like they have any sort of relationship outside of boss and employee, and she's fine with that. She just wish he wasn't so hostile all the time, because he is very gruff. He's kind of become a curmudgeon old man without being an old man. Dive and his mother start realizing there's something a little off, not specifically with Mena, but with certain behaviors. Like, she never wants Dive to drop her off at the bus stop or to drive her home. When she washes, Dive and his son's clothes, she throws her clothes in with theirs. And, at first when they asked her, she's like, oh, well, between the bus ride home, I don't have time to go to the laundromat. I hope it's okay. And they're like, yeah, sure, fine, whatever. But, little things here and there start to add up. And one day, Dive follows her home and she's living out of her car. And they correct the situation. Over time, they do develop a friendship. And as they get to know each other, that friendship develops into something romantic. And really where a lot of the character development that we see is in both of their feelings about how it's progressing, because she starts to question what her feelings for her husband was. She realizes she didn't love him the way you should for a romantic relationship. She loved him more as a friend. But she'd had parents who were kind of flaky. She kind of attached herself to her husband as a stability factor. And Dive has to come to terms with the fact that Simone is gone and get over feelings of guilt for his attraction to Mena, and realize that he isn't betraying Simone by moving on with another woman, and that it isn't depriving his son of his mother by having another woman in his life. And it's really kind of solidified because Mena encourages him to tell his son about Simone and show him pictures of her. She's very much, no, he needs to know her, and the only way it's going to happen is by you talking to him about her and telling him about her and showing him pictures of her. So she's not trying to take the mother role. She just wants to be there for them. And eventually he does get to where he is more confident in himself, in Mena as a caregiver, and more confident in himself as a father as well, which is something that most parents struggle with at times. But I think it's very clear he struggled with it a bit more because of everything that's happened. And eventually he does ask Mena to move back to Carolina Springs with him. It's symbolic because it shows that he's back to his old self. And he's back to being where he needs to be mentally and emotionally to move forward in a relationship with Mena, to move forward as a father to his son. And of course, you have Josie and you have Willow in Carolina Springs, and they are just, gaga over the baby, so to speak. So there's all sorts of support there for them. So it's a really well done story. Like I've said, there isn't a whole lot in the way of drama pertaining to being kidnapped or anybody being held hostage or anything like that. It really is more character development driven and getting over past traumas and developing a healthy relationship with someone post-trauma and post-loss. It's very well done. There, again, a lot of comedy. Julian, Willow, Dodge, and Maddie. Julian, Willow, and Dodge all come. So there's going to be a lot of hilarity that ensues with those characters. So overall, I would give this story a 4.7 out of 5 stars. I hope this review was helpful for you in deciding whether or not to read this book. If you have read any of Lila Rose's stories before, you know it's going to be very funny. I look forward to seeing you all at the next review. You have a great day. Take care. Bye-bye.